He raised his hand, against the very woman who gave him life. Neighbors heard the crash, the pleading voice of an old black mother crying, "Son, please, I'm your mama." But his heart had already turned to stone, twisted by the venom of an ex-wife who whispered, "If you really love me, prove it." What began as love ended in cruelty, and what she lost that night wasn't just her pride. It was the son she prayed for every Sunday.
But God doesn't sleep forever.
And the same man who broke his mother's heart would soon learn that no woman's approval is worth a mother's tears. Before we begin, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and comment your city below. The sun had barely risen over the quiet neighborhood of Riverside, but the faint aroma of collard greens and cornbread already drifted from a small brick house at the corner of Maple Street. Inside, Ms. Clara Johnson, a 58-year-old retired nurse, moved slowly through her modest kitchen. Her back ached, her hands were swollen from years of work, but her heart was full. Today, her son Darius was coming home. It had been 6 months since she last saw him. 6 months of silence, unanswered calls, and unanswered prayers. But when she got the text last night that read, "Ma, I'm coming by tomorrow," she nearly dropped her phone in disbelief. Clara had spent most of the night cleaning and preparing his favorite dishes. The house looked spotless, the table neatly set for two. A small smile lingered on her face as she whispered to herself, "Maybe things are finally getting better." A mother's love, Darius had always been her pride. When his father left, Clara worked double shifts at the hospital, determined to raise her boy right. She taught him to pray before bed, to respect women, to never raise his voice in anger. He was the first in their family to graduate college. When he landed his job as a real estate agent in Atlanta, Clara had cried in the church pews that Sunday, thanking God for her miracle child. But things started to change when Vanessa came into the picture. Vanessa was stunning, light-skinned, sharp-tongued, with a way of walking that made people turn heads. She came from money, and though she smiled sweetly in front of Clara, there was always something cold behind her eyes. At first, Clara had welcomed her warmly. She prayed they'd build a life together, maybe even give her grandbabies to spoil. But as months passed, Darius started calling less. Family dinners were replaced by excuses, and whenever Clara called, Vanessa's voice would answer, not Darius's. The silence between them. When Darius and Vanessa's marriage fell apart a year later, Clara thought she finally had her son back. But instead of coming home, he moved into a small apartment nearby, distant and angry. Rumors whispered that Vanessa had cheated, but she still had some kind of hold on him. Then, the unthinkable happened. One night, Darius showed up at Clara's house, eyes bloodshot, voice trembling. "Ma," he said, "Vanessa left me, and then I don't know what to do." She had wrapped her arms around him, letting him cry into her chest like he was 10 again. She prayed over him, cooked him dinner, and told him he'd find his way back. For a few months, he did seem better, helping her around the house, going back to work, smiling again, until Vanessa returned. The returned Vanessa appeared one Sunday afternoon, uninvited. She stood at the door in a sleek black dress, sunglasses covering her eyes. Clara opened the door, startled. "Vanessa," she said softly. "What are you doing here?" Vanessa gave a faint smirk. "I came to talk to Darius." "He didn't tell you?" Clara's stomach tightened. "No, he didn't." Without waiting for an invitation, Vanessa walked right in. Her perfume filled the living room. Expensive, artificial, choking. Darius emerged from the hallway, eyes lighting up at the sight of her. "Vanessa," he whispered, "you came." The way he said it made Clara's heart sink. For the next hour, Clara sat in her armchair while the two whispered in the kitchen. Every few minutes, she heard Vanessa's voice rise, sharp like a blade. "You owe me!" "You're nothing without me." "If you loved me, you'd prove it." When Vanessa finally left, slamming the door behind her, Darius sat in silence for a long time. Clara tried to reach out to him, but he pulled away. His voice was low, heavy. "Ma, you don't understand. I need her." The drift, the days that followed, were dark. Darius stopped answering Clara's calls again. He missed church. He missed her birthday. Sometimes late at night, Clara would wake up to her phone buzzing. The calls were brief. his voice distant, slurred, angry. "You always in my business, Ma. Vanessa said you never liked her. You tried to break us up," Clara would plead. "Darius, please, she's manipulating you." But he'd hang up before she could finish. Neighbors began to notice the change, too. Darius, once the polite young man who helped them carry groceries, now looked tired and hollow-eyed. The gossip spread. "He's back with that woman again," they'd say. "She got her hooks in him." The night it happened, it was a rainy Thursday evening when Darius showed up again, this time pounding on the door. Clara rushed to open it. "Baby, what's wrong?" she asked. He pushed past her, soaked, trembling. "Where's the money you keep in that cabinet, Ma?" "What money?" she said, confused. "The money you saved from your nursing days. I know you got it." "Vanessa's in trouble, and I need to help her, Darius," she said softly. "That money's for your future, for your home one day." He turned on her, eyes wild. "So you care more about your money than helping her?" "She's the mother of my child." "She lost that baby years ago, Darius," Clara whispered, tears forming. "She's lying to you again." His hands clenched. For a moment, Clara saw the little boy she raised flicker in his eyes, scared, lost, broken. But then Vanessa's voice echoed from the phone in his pocket. "She's always been against us. Don't let her win this time." And that's when it happened. He struck her. The sound echoed through the small living room, a heavy, heartbreaking thud. Clara fell to the floor, dazed, blood trickling from her lip. "Darius," she gasped. "Please!" "I'm your mother," but he didn't stop. Years of anger, confusion, and poison spilled out in that room. He hit her again, screaming words he'd regret for the rest of his life. By the time he came to his senses, she was lying unconscious on the floor. The aftermath, Darius froze, hands trembling. The reality of what he'd done hit him like thunder. He called 911, his voice shaking. "Please!" "My mom, she's hurt." When the ambulance came, the neighbors gathered outside. Some cried, others stared. The sirens painted red and blue across the wet street as they carried Clara away. Vanessa. She never showed up. The beginning of regret at the hospital, as Darius sat in the waiting room, covered in his mother's blood. He finally checked his phone. Vanessa had texted him one final message. "You really did it?" "Good. Now maybe I can trust you again." He read it twice. Then a third time. Something inside him broke. For the first time in years, he realized what he had become, a puppet, a fool, a man who betrayed the only person who ever loved him unconditionally. And as the doctor came out, face solemn, saying, "She's alive. But she might not remember you for a while." Darius felt the weight of every choice crash down on him. That night, he fell to his knees in the sterile hallway, whispering the only prayer he knew left. "God, if you let her live, I'll spend the rest of my life making this right." The rain hadn't stopped in 2 days. The gray clouds hung over Riverside like a punishment. In the quiet hospital room, the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor was the only sound breaking the silence. Darius sat by his mother's bedside, his hands clasped tightly, eyes red from sleepless nights. His mother lay motionless, her face pale and bruised, oxygen tube resting against her nose. Every second that passed felt like a reminder of what he had done. The doctors had told him she was stable but still in shock. "It'll take time," they said. "Her body's healing, but emotionally that's up to her." He couldn't even look at himself in the mirror anymore. The weight of silence. The first few days were unbearable. Darius barely spoke. He brought flowers that wilted before she ever opened her eyes. He sat for hours, whispering words that never felt enough. "Ma, I'm sorry," he'd say softly, staring at the floor. "You didn't deserve none of this." Every time a nurse walked in, he expected judgment. Some of them avoided his eyes. Others didn't hide their disgust. Word had spread. Everyone in Riverside knew what happened. The good nurse's son had turned violent. Old neighbors crossed the street when they saw him. His boss stopped returning his calls. Even Pastor Lewis at the church, who'd baptized Darius as a boy, said only, "Son, you've fallen deep. But if there's breath in your body, there's still a way back." Those words became his only anchor. The law and the shame days turned into weeks. The police had already questioned him. There was no hiding the truth. They told him Clara didn't press charges, but the state might. She told the officers she slipped, said the detective, watching him closely. But we both know that's not true. You're lucky she loves you more than herself. Those words pierced deeper than any sentence could. When Darius left the precinct that evening, Vanessa was waiting by his car. She looked calm. Too calm. Her hair was perfect, makeup flawless, as if she'd just stepped out of a magazine cover. "I heard about your little problem," she said, smiling faintly. "Guess you really do anything for me, huh?" He stared at her, silent. "You used me," he finally whispered. Vanessa shrugged. "You knew who I was when you married me." "Don't act brand new. Why?" he asked. "Why'd you come back? Just to destroy me?" Her smirk faded. "You destroyed yourself, Darius. I just helped you see it faster." She turned and walked away, heels clicking against the wet pavement, leaving him standing there, hollow, soaked and broken. A mother's awakening a week later. Clara woke up. Her eyes fluttered open slowly to the white light above her bed. At first, she didn't know where she was. Her body ached, her throat was dry. Then she saw him. Darius, asleep in the chair beside her, head hanging, tears dried on his face. Her instinct as a mother rose before her pain could. She reached out and touched his hand weakly. "Baby," she whispered. His eyes shot open. He jumped to his feet, grabbing her hand. "Ma, oh God, you're awake." She smiled faintly, but her voice trembled. "Darius, what happened to us?" He broke down then. No pride left to hold. "Ma, I don't even know. I let her get in my head. I thought I was proving love, but I lost everything that mattered." Clara's eyes filled with tears. She turned her face away. "You didn't lose me, baby." "Not yet, but you lost yourself. And until you find that man I raised again, we can't heal." Those words cut through him like scripture. The path to redemption. In the following weeks, Darius started showing up at the church again, not to hide, but to rebuild. Pastor Lewis gave him work in the community pantry, stacking boxes and sweeping floors. People avoided him at first, whispering behind his back. But he didn't argue. He worked quietly day after day. Sometimes, when he saw mothers come in with their sons, laughing, holding hands, he'd feel a sharp ache inside his chest. But instead of running from it, he faced it. At night, he'd visit Clara again, reading scripture by her bedside, massaging her hands, praying for forgiveness. She didn't speak much. Sometimes she'd hum old hymns. Sometimes she'd just close her eyes when he read aloud. But slowly, the wall between them began to crumble. The truth unfolds one evening while volunteering. Darius overheard two women whispering near the donation table. "Girl, you hear about Vanessa? She tried to con that old investor. Said she had Darius's property papers signed over to her name." "What? So she's still playing folks?" "Mm-hmm. Guess karma's about to find her." Darius froze. Later that night, he did something he should have done long ago. He went through his old files. Hidden among his things were copies of forged documents. Vanessa had been transferring his real estate assets slowly, even after the divorce. The betrayal made him sick. But this time, he didn't explode. He acted. He gathered evidence and took it straight to the authorities. Within days, Vanessa was caught in an embezzlement investigation. News spread fast. Local realtor's ex-wife accused of fraud. For the first time in a long time, Darius didn't feel powerless. He wasn't angry anymore. He was awake, healing, and forgiveness. The night after Vanessa's arrest, Darius returned to the hospital with a bouquet of lilies. Clara was sitting up, reading her Bible. He stood quietly at the door until she looked up. "Ma," he said softly, "it's over." The police got her. Clara didn't react immediately. She just stared at him for a moment, then nodded. "And what about you, son? Did you find peace?" He exhaled. "Not yet, but I'm trying. I'm not asking you to forget what I did. I just want a chance to prove I can still be the man you raised." Clara reached out her hand. "Then start right here." He stepped forward and took it, his eyes glistening. For the first time in months, she smiled. Not fully, not freely, but with hope. The community's eyes word of Vanessa's arrest spread through Riverside. The same neighbors who once crossed the street now nodded at him again. Pastor Lewis even mentioned his name in Sunday service. Sometimes the fall is the start of the climb. Our brother Darius found himself in the valley, but the Lord don't leave his children there. Applause filled the church, quiet but real. After service, old Mrs. Haynes approached him. "You hurt that woman who gave you life, boy," she said, her voice trembling. "But I see you trying." "That's what matters," he bowed his head. "I'll never stop trying." Facing his reflection, weeks passed. Clara's wounds healed, but her spirit still carried scars. Some nights she'd wake up crying, remembering the moment that nearly tore her apart. But each time she opened her eyes, she saw her son kneeling beside her bed, holding her hand, whispering prayers. That became their rhythm. Pain, prayer, progress. One evening, she said softly, "You know, when you hit me, it wasn't your hand I felt. It was the devil's lie that told you love had to hurt. But we serve a God who can turn pain into purpose." Darius nodded, tears falling silently. "I just hope one day you can forgive me." "I already did," she said, smiling gently. "Now forgive yourself." The beginning of New Light months later, Darius reopened his real estate business, but this time under a new name, Second Chances Realty. He hired ex-felons, single mothers, and young men who'd lost their way, giving them the chance his mother had given him. Clara visited often, sitting in the front office with her cane greeting clients. She had forgiven, but she hadn't forgotten. That memory became their foundation, a reminder of how far they'd come. One day, as they closed up shop, Darius looked at her and said, "Ma, thank you for not giving up on me." She smiled. "A mother's love don't quit, baby. But next time, listen before life has to teach you the hard way," they laughed. Together, the kind of laugh that only comes after surviving something that should have destroyed. Morning light slanted through the courthouse windows, painting long lines across the polished floors. Darius stood outside courtroom 3B in his best gray suit, the same one he once wore to close million-dollar deals. His hands shook, but not from fear this time. From the weight of what he owed the world. Inside, reporters whispered. The Riverside Tribune headline that week had already spread. Local realtor's ex-wife accused of fraud. Former partner turns witness. When the judge entered, everyone rose. Vanessa sat at the defense table, chin high, eyes sharp, but the confidence she once wielded like a weapon was gone. Her wrists trembled ever so slightly. The prosecutor called the first witness. "Mr. Darius Johnson," he said, "please step forward." As Darius took the stand, a hush fell. The microphone crackled when he spoke. "Your Honor, I'm not here to destroy anyone. I'm here to tell the truth." He described everything, the manipulation, the forged papers, the emotional hold she had over him. Every word was a confession and a release. He didn't try to make himself look good. When he spoke about his mother, his voice broke. "She loved me even when I didn't deserve it. That's why I'm standing here now, to make right what I helped ruin." Across the room, Clara watched from the front row. She wore a simple blue dress and held her Bible in her lap. For a long time, she hadn't looked at Vanessa. Now she did, and her gaze was steady, not hateful, just tired and resolute. Vanessa's attorney tried to discredit Darius, calling him unstable, but the evidence spoke louder. The fake contracts, the bank transfers, the recordings. By noon, the courtroom knew who the real villain was. When the judge read the verdict, guilty on all counts of fraud and falsification of documents, a ripple of quiet justice moved through the crowd. Vanessa closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheek, but Darius didn't feel triumph. Only release. Outside, the cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. "Mr. Johnson, do you feel vindicated?" He shook his head. "No, I feel forgiven." There's a difference. That Sunday, Pastor Lewis invited Darius to speak at church. The place was packed. Curiosity had drawn even those who hadn't stepped inside in years. Darius stood at the pulpit, voice low but firm. "I used to think success was about money, cars, and the people who clap for you. Then I lost it all, and I learned that real wealth is the love you keep and the peace you fight for. I hurt the person who gave me life, and she forgave me. If that isn't grace, I don't know what is." People were silent for a moment. Then the congregation rose to their feet. Some cried, others applauded softly. Clara stood among them, tears streaming but smiling wide. After service, young men came to shake his hand. One said quietly, "I was angry at my mom, too. You made me think." Months later, Riverside's skyline gleamed with new projects from Second Chances Realty. Darius had turned his own story into a mission, offering housing programs for families recovering from abuse and addiction. The city even honored Clara with a community award for resilience and grace. When she stepped on stage, she said simply, "A mother's prayer can reach places her child can't. That's how we survived." The audience erupted in applause. Afterward, she turned to Darius. "You kept your promise," she said. He smiled. "You kept me alive. The story closes not in bitterness, but in rebirth. Forgiveness can rebuild what shame destroys. No one is too lost to find their way back if they face the truth. And a mother's love, when rooted in faith, can heal even the wounds caused by her own child." The rain had stopped. The morning sun streamed softly through the curtains of Clara's small living room. The air smelled faintly of the jasmine oil she always burned after prayer. On the coffee table sat a tray, 2 cups of tea, one slightly chipped from years of use. Beside it, a Bible opened to Luke 15:24. "For this my son was dead, and is alive again. He was lost, and is found." The front door opened quietly. Darius stood there, hesitant, thinner than before, his eyes heavy with months of guilt. He didn't wear his expensive suits anymore, just a plain shirt, sleeves rolled, the man stripped of pride, but dressed in truth. "Mom." His voice broke on that single word. Clara didn't move for a moment. She studied his face. The boy she raised, the man who lost himself, and the son who had finally come home. Without a word, she opened her arms. He fell into her embrace like a child who had wandered too far. They stayed that way, silent tears mingling, pain melting into forgiveness. The ticking of the clock was the only sound in the house, steady, like 2 hearts learning to beat in rhythm again. "You came back," Clara whispered. "I had nowhere else to go," Darius replied. "No one else I could face." "Then face me," she said, lifting his chin gently. "Not as a failure, as my son,